Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Thank you for tuning in, whether it's on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Lots to get into. I do want to sort of carry over a little bit from the conversation yesterday, which was focusing all in on Harrison Butker and his commencement speech at a Catholic college in Kansas. I think a lot of folks who are outraged and just freaking out about that may be losing sight of the fact that he was giving a commencement speech at a pretty orthodox Catholic small private college in Kansas. So he was, if not speaking to the 485 graduates, 22, 23, 24 years of age in general, he was definitely speaking to the faculty and to the orthodoxy of the Catholic Church, if not the very conservative strain of it, nonetheless. But he has caught a lot of backlash for it. Folks are outraged. It's the talk of even the sports world for some reason. I don't know what anybody, do they expect the Chiefs to cut him? No, he's a good kicker. He's a very good kicker. The NFL, no, you can't. This is a First Amendment issue. It's not like he said anything illegal or advocated for anything illegal. Nonetheless, we did get the Atlanta Falcons football schedule released last night, along with the rest of the NFL's. And lo and behold, Harrison Butker, along with Travis Kelce and MVP quarterback Patrick Mahomes, head coach Andy Reid, and it would appear her schedule is free. Taylor Swift may be coming back to Atlanta for that game as well. You think this is silly? I do too, but it's literally a story folks are covering. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution Sports. In fact, nobody wanted to put their name on this. I assume nobody wanted to put their name on this because the byline is by AJC Sports. No sports writer. I'm not putting my name on that. I can just hear the old man and, my name is Taylor Swift. I'm here to cover football. Nobody wanted to put their name on this. Taylor Swift may be returning to Atlanta. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution Sports Department writes, no, there will be no concerts like the 3-day epic of sold-out shows at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in April of 2023, where the megastar played to some 300,000 adoring fans. I can just hear a grousing sports writer writing this. Taylor Swift, I went to journalism school and sports for 100 years, and I'm covering a pop star. The Chiefs are coming to town, the article states. The NFL released its schedule for the 2024 season yesterday. The Falcons will host the Chiefs in Week 3, a Sunday night football matchup on September 22nd. Of course, everybody knows Taylor Swift currently dating tight end Travis Kelce. And she went to, it says here, 13 games last year, including the Super Bowl win. And, she really had to bust her little tail to do that because she was on tour, I believe, in Tokyo. And, yeah, it was Tokyo. And had to fly back to the United States in the wee hours of her day. They're a day ahead, right? And, yeah. Anyway, so Taylor Swift, the Swiftie Nation, the Kansas City Chiefs, more importantly, are coming to take on our beleaguered, beloved Atlanta Falcons, Week 3, and we assume the Falcons. You did not come here to listen to me talk sports, or did you? Anyway, would assume that Kirk Cousins would still be the starting quarterback then. No, I wanted to continue the Harrison Butker conversation more because the attention he garnered for this story, and by the way, we'll get into the real politics stuff here in just a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Just a little grace here. I just kind of want to bow tie the full show that was yesterday's rebutting of Harrison Butker, right? We've got a debate scheduled now between two very old men who want to be president of the United States. Must see TV. Anyway, the bow tie I wanted to put on the Harrison Butker stories. He got a lot of flack because he really made the sales pitch, the insinuation that this was God's calling for women to take on the vocation of being a homemaker. And that's fine if, you marry a $4 million a year star athlete or whatever somebody does for $4 million a year. If you want to be a homemaker, hey, they're making $4 million a year. You've got the opportunity. If that's your dream, if that's your life goal. Nonetheless, how about this from page 6? When did this come out? Yeah, this was yesterday. The headline, Mom of Chiefs player who told women to be homemakers is an accomplished physicist. Harrison Butker's mother is not a homemaker, was not a homemaker. Nicholas Hauptman with this story that he filed yesterday on page6.com. Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker faced backlash for telling female college graduates to become homemakers. But his mom, Elizabeth Keller Butker, is an accomplished physicist. Remember now, Harrison and family, they're from Atlanta. He went to Westminster. He then stayed here in the city and played for Georgia Tech before going on to the NFL, where he played for the Carolina Panthers for a minute. We forgive him for that. He went on to Kansas City. Keller Butker has worked in the Department of Radiation Oncology at the Emory University School of Medicine in Atlanta since 1988, according to her LinkedIn. A 2020 article by the school's Winship Cancer Institute stated that she specializes in 2 forms of radiation, brachytherapy and gamma knife medical physics care. I'm not even sure I said that first one right. Nonetheless, it's just interesting, notable. Keller Butker obtained her master's degree in medical physics from the nearby Georgia Institute of Technology, Georgia Tech, in 1988, after getting a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts in 1985. Her father, James W. Keller, was also worked in oncology at Emory for 28 years before his retirement in 2011, per the school's staff directory. Page 6 has reached out to Keller Butker for comment on her son's controversial remarks. Naturally, she has given none. Here is the controversial statement that Butker made at the commencement ceremony at Benedictine College earlier this week.
Because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation.
That from the man whose mother is an accomplished Emory University physicist. By the way, the NFL, well, again, fining, cutting, none of that's going to happen. The NFL did release a statement, a condemnation of sorts. Samantha Ryan at page 6 reporting on this. The NFL condemning Harrison Butker's sexist anti-LGBTQ graduation speech, stating that we're steadfast in our commitment to inclusion. Harrison Butker gave a speech in his personal capacity, the NFL's senior vice president and chief diversity and inclusion officer, Jonathan Bean, telling People magazine Wednesday, his views are not those of the NFL as an organization. The NFL is steadfast in our commitment to inclusion, which only makes our league stronger. All right, I really do want to turn the page and talk some politics now that I think we've covered Swiftie Nation and sports and the Kansas City Chief kerfuffle all over again. How about this from WXIA TV 11 Alive? We got this news yesterday.
Well, get ready for presidential politics to zero in here on Georgia. Atlanta will host the first presidential debate of the 2024 campaign.
And it's going to come to Atlanta. It'll be on CNN. And in late June, this happened so fast, like within minutes after President Joe Biden issued this challenge.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
The Wednesday swipe, though. Damn. Back to WXIA TV 11 Alive with the details.
Yeah, some big news today. Both President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump have agreed to square off on June 27th in a debate hosted by CNN. 11 Alive's Doug Richards live downtown with more on what we can expect. Doug.
Yeah, this certainly came as a bit of a surprise, not only because of the date, which is really just a few weeks from now in late June, just after the start of summer, and because it meant that the Trump and Biden campaigns actually agreed on something. Their September debate in 2020 was fiery and somewhat memorable as Joe Biden sought to wrest the presidency away from Donald Trump. The debate in Atlanta next month will take place in a state that helped swing the Electoral College to Biden 4 years ago. But Republicans like Sally Grubbs think Trump will have the advantage this time.
Anytime people see President Trump and he talks about his record and the things that he's done for the country, I think it's a good way to coalesce everyone and get everyone excited for the election.
Well, I'm very excited. It's proof that Georgia is still in play on the national level.
Democrat Michael Bond says the early debate will help sway voters who may be thinking of sitting out this election to think again.
This is telling that this debate is happening so soon and so far away from the target election date, because every vote is going to matter.
Michael Julian Bond making a good point there, but what worries me, honestly, is that these debates are so far out from the election that you get a sense that there's going to be more noise about future. This is going to become a TV series, a mini series of two grumpy old men. Grumpy old men. It'll be Grumpy Old Men, the series. Oh, God. I would definitely watch Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau debate far more than I would want to watch this rehash. It's the substance of the format that is pretty interesting to me. And I know a lot of folks think, oh, this is a Biden win because the mics will get muted after time allotment's over, yada, yada, yada. Listen, if they're in the same room, do you not think Donald Trump will just continue shouting so that he can be heard over whatever mic is in the room? I mean, you're not going to have a complete vacuum of silence when time is up. I happen to think that this only amplifies the opportunity for crazy, brazen insanity to even look more so. Patricia Murphy, by the way, writing in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that Atlanta getting this is kind of a big deal. When Democratic organizers picked Chicago over Atlanta as the host for the 2024 Democratic National Convention last year, it felt like Atlanta's chances for a moment of high influence ahead of the 2024 presidential election had come and gone. But as Chicago prepares for potentially disruptive protests to go along with the standard convention speeches, word came Wednesday that Atlanta will be in the spotlight after all when CNN hosts the first presidential debate here in June. The announcement came after weeks of debate taunts from former President Donald Trump, who has begun to tote an empty lectern to his rallies as a prop to represent, quote, crooked Joe Biden, who Trump said is either too senile or too afraid to take him on man to man. Biden fired back, of course, this week with the video of his own, the whole make my day dirty Harry thing. God, this is such an old trope. With that Metamucil machismo still thick in the air, Patricia. CNN announced Wednesday that both Biden and Trump have agreed to debate each other on June 27th at the CNN studios in Atlanta. That's a Thursday, by the way, not a Wednesday. So I guess what Patricia's saying here is instead of 3 to 4 days of disruptive violence and protests, we'll just get the one. And of course, the traffic. Just go ahead and take the day off. Atlantans, just take that day off. Just circle it on your calendar, June 27th. You're not going into work. You're not. There's no way. We're going to have two motorcades and the media. There's just no way. Just avoid being on a road or a highway in Atlanta that day. That is your public service announcement here from The Ron Show. Back after this on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Follow The Ron Show at Ron Show ATL on your preferred social media platform. The Twitter X platform, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, RonShowATL.com for show notes and past episodes. So while we are facing the specter of a June 27th debate here in Atlanta, where two grumpy old men get to holler at each other and agree on absolutely nothing, including, I would think, who won the 2020 election. That has to be a question asked, right? No debate moderator who takes that job is going to pass on the opportunity to get both of them on the record on that, and that'll lead to minutes of shouting and yelling and insane accusations, unproven allegations that we've all litigated for, in our minds or in courtrooms even for nearly 4 years now. So while we're facing that, how about some bipartisanship? Can we get some agreement on anything? I'd like to think that this is one that we might get some agreement on, and I'm actually bewildered, a little surprised, and also curious as to the timing. You have a Georgia lawmaker, Trey Kelly, a Republican from Cedartown, Georgia, who is proposing that a statue honoring Atlanta Brave legend Henry Aaron be placed in the U.S. Capitol. Greg Bluestein reporting on this. This dropped just minutes ago this morning here. Key Georgia lawmakers got behind a plan 3 years ago to remove the statue of Confederate leader Alexander Stephens from the U.S. Capitol, but their negotiations stalled amid disputes over whose likeness should replace it. There's nothing more American than baseball, and no one personifies American values more than Hank Aaron, said State Representative Trey Kelly, a six-term GOP lawmaker from Cedartown. He used his influence to advance civil rights, inspire entrepreneurship, and hammer home the Georgia we know today, he added. Kelly's proposal reopens a long-running debate over who should represent Georgia at the U.S. Capitol, and it comes as other southern states are revisiting their selections to the National Statuary Hall. He was quickly echoed by Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, the president of the Senate. Jones called Aaron, quote, a hero to Georgians everywhere and deserves to be honored in a way that reflects his stature and his commitment to Georgia values. Jones adding, I can't think of anyone better to be honored with one of our two statues in the U.S. Capitol than Hank Aaron. Greg Bluestein continues, there's broad consensus over removing Stephens, a white supremacist, who was the vice president of the Confederacy and famously denounced the Declaration of Independence's contention that, quote, all men were created equal. But a bipartisan proposal to replace it with the likeness of the late U.S. Representative John Lewis, the Democratic civil rights leader, failed to gain traction, despite support from Governor Brian Kemp, then House Speaker David Ralston, and then Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. Federal law signed by President Abraham Lincoln in 1864 gave each state the final say on which two statues to display at the U.S. Capitol, and southern states often deployed the law to honor, in the 1920s, Confederate war heroes and segregationist leaders. Georgia's all-white General Assembly voted in 1926 to use one of its statues to honor Crawford Long, a 19th century physician who pioneered the use of ether in surgery. A year later, lawmakers added a stone version of Stephens to the display. Let me first say, huge Braves fan. I have a Henry Aaron jersey. I was actually just born, a month and a half before the historic 715th home run. Okay, that doesn't really matter. But anyway, huge Braves fan, big Henry Aaron advocate. I'm a little concerned, and I would say the same in the mentioning of John Lewis as well. Both of them were born and grew up in the state of Alabama. Okay, so yes, their accomplishments, the most notable of their accomplishments were while Atlantans, Georgians, but I don't know, is that nitpicky? Maybe. Okay, maybe. Bluestein in the article with some more context here. If successful, Georgia would join other states that have withdrawn statues of divisive or racist figures at Statuary Hall. Florida 2 years ago replaced the statue of a Confederate general, one honoring Mary McLeod Bethune, a black educator, and North Carolina unveiled a statue of the Reverend Billy Graham to replace one of a white supremacist who served as governor. Still, even with support from powerful Republicans, an Aaron for Stephens trade is not assured. Talk of an Aaron statue a few years ago never got far. Kelly's plan can't even be voted on until legislators reconvene in January. Kemp is not taking a stance yet, letting the General Assembly take the lead, and other legislative leaders didn't immediately weigh in. Still, Kelly is optimistic that his colleagues will embrace the idea, saying, it's time Georgia unites and recognize one of our favorite sons on Capitol Hill. Okay, so there's lots more to go into here. President Joe Biden actually called into an Atlanta radio station, so we have some audio of that where, of course, he's going to be touting his running for re-election against the embattled former presidents who, get stuck in court a lot, getting naps. What else? Jay Bookman, our friend of the show, Jay Bookman, wrote an op-ed speaking to the Georgia Supreme Court race. By the way, that's going to be on the primary ballot coming up here in just a matter of days. If you haven't already voted for that, our early voting will be wrapping up here soon. In fact, tomorrow, I believe. Anyway, Jay Bookman in the Georgia Recorder asks the question, why can governors appoint justices based on their ideology, but voters can't? Huh. So I'm going to spend a little time reading that for you here. Let's wet your whistle just a little bit. I'm running a little low on time here. In his campaign for a seat on the Georgia Supreme Court, Attorney John Barrow is daring to challenge the hypocrisy of a judicial system that claims to be apolitical, but is anything but. He is doing so by making it clear to the voters and to everyone else that he is a supporter of a woman's right to choose. Bookman continues, by custom, judicial candidates aren't supposed to make such statements. They're supposed to pretend to be apolitical, so the public can believe that judges have no agenda and rule only on the facts and the law. Wink, wink. That's a pleasant fiction, Bookman writes, but dangerously naive, as we've seen quite clearly at the federal level. Time and time again, nominees pledge their independence in Senate confirmation hearings, but once in office, they behave politically. So we'll give you that full op-ed piece. Jay Bookman opining that John Barrow should be able to run based on issues as he's running for a Georgia Supreme Court seat. When the Ron Show returns on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast.
Follow The Ron Show on Facebook at The Ron Show Radio. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
All right, in a little bit, we'll give you some audio from President Joe Biden on the phone with the Big Tigger morning show on V103. WVEE. But I want to get back to the op-ed that Jay Bookman, the Georgia Recorder, writes. In fact, he filed that yesterday. It dropped this morning. Jay Bookman asking, why can governors appoint justices based on their ideology, but voters can't? You see, John Barrow, we had him on the show, a week or so ago, running for a Georgia Supreme Court seat against Andrew Pinson. Andrew Pinson adjudicating on the record on a woman's right to choose. And John Barrow wants to run for office to prove that he's diabolically opposed to it. But obviously, as we talked about, and he pointed out to us, John Barrow did on the show, there are sanctions that could be levied against him that could have him removed from the seat if he wins it by voters for running on the issue of women's choice. It's the craziest thing, right? So anyway, Jay Bookman wrote an op-ed that's at GeorgiaRecorder.com. Of course, we'll have it in the show notes at RonShowATL.com. Let me give you back the first couple of paragraphs that we started with before we took off for break here. In his campaign for a seat on the Georgia Supreme Court, Attorney John Barrow is daring to challenge the hypocrisy of a judicial system that claims to be apolitical, but is anything but. He is doing so by making it clear to the voters and to everyone else that he is a supporter of a woman's right to choose. By custom, judicial candidates aren't supposed to make such statements. They're supposed to pretend to be apolitical so that the public can believe that judges have no agenda and rule only on the facts and the law. That's a pleasant fiction, Jay Bookman writes, but dangerously naive, as we've seen quite clearly at the federal level. Time and again, nominees pledge their independence in Senate confirmation hearings, but once in office, they behave politically. I would dare say that they actually lied under oath in a few cases, Trump nominees. I mean, if anyone's going to lose a judicial seat, it should be for lying under oath, right? Anyway, back to Jay Bookman's op-ed. By bringing up abortion in his race against incumbent Justice Andrew Pinson, Barrow has drawn criticism and a warning from the State Judicial Qualifications Commission, which frowns upon judicial candidates who express political opinions. Barrow's honesty has also drawn the attention of Governor Brian Kemp, who appointed Pinson to the state's highest court 2 years ago. This week, Kemp committed $500,000 of his own campaign funds in support of Pinson's election. The governor also cut a political ad on behalf of Pinson, explaining it as a defense against putting, quote, partisan politicians in the courtroom. That's a clear reference to Barrow, a former Democratic congressman. However, two current justices on the state Supreme Court, both of whom were appointed by Republican governors, also had significant political careers before joining the bench. So being a politician has not exactly been considered a disqualification, Bookman writes. And if Kemp is truly concerned about partisan politics in the court system, he has chosen a strange way to communicate it. In the TV ad he cut and paid for on Pinson's behalf, he lauds the incumbent justice as, quote, a conservative voice we can trust, which itself is barely coded political statements that Pinson is pro-life, Bookman opines. That stance is not surprising because we know Kemp to be a strong pro-life advocate. As such, would he ever appoint someone to the state Supreme Court who had a pro-choice record? No, he would not, Bookman opines. So why is it, quote, apolitical and perfectly fine for a governor to appoint only justices who share his position on abortion, yet somehow improper for voters to elect judges on that same criteria? By the way, here is audio from that Brian Kemp sponsored ad for Andrew Pinson.
Georgia is the best place to live, work, and raise a family, but we need your help to keep it that way. We need judges who follow the law and uphold the Constitution, not more partisan politicians in the courtroom. That's why I'm supporting my friend Justice Andrew Pinson for Georgia Supreme Court. Andrew is the conservative voice we can trust. Join me in supporting Justice Andrew Pinson by voting early or on Election Day, Tuesday, May 21st.
The whole thought that, judges are to uphold the law, to me, is also something of a little bit of a distortion in that sometimes judges are supposed to strike down laws that aren't lawful. Just because a legislator or a legislative body passes a bill and the governor signs it into law, that doesn't make the law the law. The justices get to weigh in when the law is challenged in courts, which is something that someone who's running for a state or federal or running for a state Supreme Court seat should be able to challenge. And that's why John Barrow should be allowed to talk about abortion, because the Georgia 6-week abortion ban, in my opinion, and his as well, shouldn't be lawful. Back to the Bookman piece here. In October, the Georgia Supreme Court ruled 6-1 in favor of a state law banning abortions after 6 weeks. It is no accident that all 6 of the justices voting in favor of the ban, including Pinson, were first appointed to the court by Republican governors. The single justice who thought the ban violated the Georgia Constitution is also the only justice who was first elevated to the court by voters, not appointed by a GOP governor. Bookman continues, it's also important to point out how supposedly apolitical justices themselves play an important role in ensuring ideological continuity in the state's top court. Let me explain how it works, Jay Bookman writes. Under the state constitution, voters, not governors, are supposed to have primary responsibility for electing judges. But justices have found a way around that provision using a loophole that strips that power from voters and invests it instead in the governor. Suppose a justice has decided to retire or not seek re-election, Bookman writes. That creates an open seat, and you'd expect candidates to emerge to seek that open seat, with voters making the final decision. However, if a justice times it right, if he or she resigns before their 6-year term is officially over, suddenly that open seat vanishes. Instead, a vacancy is said to have occurred, and the governor, not the voters, gets to fill that vacancy. The election that would have filled that empty seat is then postponed for 2 years, ensuring that the governor's appointee is a full-fledged incumbent by the time he or she has to face the voters. And incumbent justices rarely, if ever, lose. Listen, who among us hasn't gone in to vote in an election not knowing who the hell these people are when it gets to judicial vacancies? There are so many judicial vacancies and so many levels that, and again, because they're apolitical, you don't get to see the D or the R on the ballot, so you don't really know. You're just like, let's stick with the incumbent, which is what most people do. For Barrow, Jay Bookman writes, that system has proved frustrating. There's no way he would ever be appointed to the court by a Republican governor, so his best hope of becoming a justice is by competing for an open seat. In 2019, Barrow was putting together a campaign for what was expected to be an open Supreme Court seat with the retirement of Justice Robert Benham. But Benham resigned early. Kemp got to name his replacement, and the election was canceled. In 2020, Barrow was again eyeing an expected open seat on the court. But again, Justice Keith Blackwell resigned early. The governor got to name his replacement, and again the election was canceled. In 2022, Barrow was ready to try a third time, Bookman writes, but was foiled again when Chief Justice David Namias resigned early, again allowing the governor to name his replacement and again canceling the election, Jay Bookman writes. Namias himself had been appointed to the High Court that very same way. The man appointed to fill that seat was Andrew Pinson. Jay Bookman continues, so to review, it's okay for a governor to appoint justices based on their ideology, but voters can't be allowed to do so. It's wrong to inject partisan politics into judicial elections, but okay for a governor to tout a candidate as, quote, a conservative voice we can trust. And we should respect the independence of the judiciary, even as members of the judiciary game the system so that voters never get a chance to fill an open seat. Jay Bookman finishes by saying, I'm no Supreme Court justice, but that just don't seem right. Of course, I'll share that in the show notes. You get that at ronshowatl.com. So, big news, and I'm sure it was quite the buzz inside the hallways inside Odyssey Atlanta. I used to work there, by the way. When the Big Tigger Morning Show got a time to talk with President Joe Biden. Let's give you that. Let's give you some audio of that. We'll just kind of pick through a little bit of what it is that we want to hear of that and see if the president makes any headlines there.
Boys and girls, joining on the phone this morning, the Big Tigger Morning Show, none other than our president, Joe Biden. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, pal. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us here again, the great city of Atlanta. Thanks you for your commitment to this country and all that you do for us. What's at stake for voters this election?
I think our very democracy is at stake. You know, Trump is already saying that last time out the election was rigged, it wasn't true. I watched him doing a thing in New Jersey recently saying that he received more votes than any president. He doesn't mention I received 8 million more votes than he did, but that doesn't seem to count to him. And this is a guy who, encouraged an insurrection on January 6th. That insurrection attacked the right to vote, and found ourselves in a situation where he now says that if in fact he gets elected, he's going to give them all pardons. All those people pled guilty and were convicted. A couple cops were killed. I mean, it's just, and I watched him today saying that if he doesn't win this time, there'll be a bloodbath. What president has ever said anything like that? I'll restore the right to choose for the national ban, punish women. Now what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. He wants to make the wealthy corporations pay less. I want them to pay their fair share. Going to double down on his $2 trillion tax cut. This is a guy, by the way, who when he was president of the United States, he had started with more jobs than he ended with. The only guy other than him was another guy who became very famous named Herbert Hoover. but all kidding aside, he has a fundamentally different view of America than I do. And it's all about hate, retribution, and this is a guy who says that about dictators like Putin, if a country that we have an alliance with is not paying what he thinks is their fair share for their own defense, he tells Putin, just go ahead and invade. It's all yours, man. Wow. And the list goes on. But
the list does go on, and however, unfortunately, he's running through. And maybe this was I'm not listening to the live version of this. I think I'm listening to a reproduced version. Although it's 11 minutes, so was this? I don't know. It sounds like I'm listening to a produced version of this because it's happening so fast. There's so much rapid fire, point being made. Kind of curious if that was how the conversation rolled out or not, because I don't think it's really benefiting the president. Anyway, going to take a quick break, come back and give you some more of that audio when the Ron Show returns here on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, or wherever you podcast. We're in the home stretch. Show notes for today's show and any podcast or episode that you listen to, by the way, can be found at ronshowatl.com. So we're eavesdropping on the conversation that President Joe Biden had on the Big Tigger Morning Show on WVEE V103. And before taking a break, we're just noting how like bang, 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 the president's just whipping out the notes left and right so fast. Don't know if this is like edited or whittled down. I have to guess this was pre-recorded and edited down for airplay. Just being a radio guy, I know that, like, for one, you don't always get the president of the United States, by the way, within your morning show slot. And so you got to take the call, and whenever you can take the call, you'll take the call. My God, yeah, you'll rearrange your schedule to take the call. If it's 3 p.m, Big Tigger, go home, get a nap, come back, take the call, right? That's what This sounds like just my ear tells me that this was sort of a pre-recorded thing. But anyway, the president's just whipping out the notes left and right. Let's get back to where we stopped.
Literally, and I heard him today, I was watching my staff put together a presentation in New Jersey, and he said that foreign leaders respect him. Well, I don't know, man. I go to all these international conferences. I've known foreign leaders for a long time. I don't know, man. I can't think of any who are true Democrats who are looking for him to get elected. They're democracy. Like, for example, when the kid got shot in that shooting, he said, when I was asked about it, he said, well, this guy, you got to get over it. Just get over it.
Right.
Give me a break. Anyway, I can go on, but I shouldn't. probably.
Talking to President Joe Biden this morning on the Big Ticket Morning Show. For Georgia residents that may say, what has the Biden-Harris administration done for me as a black person? What would you offer to them, the things that your administration has done? They may not be familiar with some of the accomplishments. Can you speak to some of those first?
I promise to have get through this toughest time in history with the act, the first act that no Republican voted for. We vaccinated the country and gave $1,400 checks to people to get through that period of time. And we created 15 million new jobs. We built black wealth back up. Black wealth is up 60% since the pandemic. Black home ownership is up. I'm fighting back against racial bias and home appraisal. Nearly 1 million new business applications in Georgia after investing hundreds of millions of dollars in small businesses in the state. Mm-hmm. Saved 76,000 black homeowners more than $800 a month. I promised to relieve student debt, and I did. $160 billion in student loan debt, and nearly 4.6 million borrowers, including many black borrowers in Georgia. Plan to relieve student loan debt for $30 million overall. I've invested in HBCUs because the students are just as bright and capable of any university. They don't have the endowments other universities have. So to build laboratories and the like for all the future advanced technology. And, you know, whether Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, Savannah State, Spelman, Fort Valley State, you know, and we took on big pharma. You know, the result is a lot of African Americans need insulin like many other Americans need to deal with their diabetes. Well, guess what? It used to be $400 a month. Now it's $35 a month.
Nice.
We're going to cap all expenses. We passed the law passing all expenses. Prescription drugs at $2,000 beginning January 2024 for 1.9 million Georgia Medicare. More black families have health coverage under the ACA than ever before. The list goes on. And we put money in pockets, as I said, making progress. But too many corporations are still ripping people off. That's why these junk fees I'm going after. You know, they crack down on the idea if you bounce a check, you're going to have to pay $35, $40 in a fee. Well, I changed that. You can't charge more than $8 because it's just a junk fee. Cracking down on corporate price gouging, stop banks, hotels, airlines charging these fees. And look, Trump hurt black people every chance we got as president. Black unemployment, non-insurance rates went up under Trump. Trump's tax scam reinforced discrimination. Typical white household got double the cut of the typical black household. They botched the COVID-19 response to supposedly leaving black people dead. Black-owned businesses shuttered.
Wow. Oh, my. Trump hurt black people every chance he got. Black unemployment, uninsurance rates went up. Tax plan reinforced discrimination. White households got double the cut, the typical black household. Botched the COVID-19 response. Black people dead. Black-owned businesses shuttered, he said. Let's continue.
He pushed to bring back stop and frisk law. Yeah. Remember who Trump is. He falsely accused of Central Park 5. He's the founder of birthers. He tried to repeal Obamacare the first time.
Right.
Now he's promised to do even more damage to black.
You mentioned the Affordable Health Care Act, and access to affordable health care is a major issue for the black community.
Absolutely.
What else can be done by your administration to help combat that?
Well, first of all, the first most important thing we can do is make sure the Affordable Health Care Act is not cut by this guy, which he says he's going to do it. And lower prescription drug costs. We've done that. We pay the most expensive drug costs in the world. And, you know, we brought down, as I said, the case for capped insulin costs at $35 instead of $400.
Okay.
More black families have coverage under the ACA. Black enrollment has nearly doubled, saving families $800 a month on premiums. We took on big pharma, so Medicare can now negotiate prices. Under Trump, uninsurance rates went up. And not was down. He tried to repeal Obamacare and the ACA 50 times. And if he succeeds, it would raise premiums $12,000 for a Georgia middle class family. He wants to cut Social Security, and he wants to make sure the Medicare is cut as well, increasing costs, giving tax rates to the super wealthy. And the bottom line here is that this is a guy who is all about wanting to make all these cuts so he can make multi-billionaires and millionaires tax breaks, significant tax. And I have a completely different view of it.
I appreciate that. We are talking to President Joe Biden this morning on the Big Ticket Morning Show on V103. President, I'll get you out of here on this last question. There's been a lot of conversation about the lack of enthusiasm in this particular election, or maybe some voters who might be apathetic due to some of the policies and what's taking place in the Middle East. Here in Atlanta, there's even been chatter about potential protests of your commencement address at Morehouse, for example. What are your response to these voters? What can you say to these people to reassure them that their vote does matter and is needed?
Most people, black, white, Hispanic, Asian American, don't focus on the vote until they get closer to the fall. Mm-hmm. Just a practical matter. They're every day trying to meet ends, put things together. So that's number one. But number two, it's hard to get legitimate information these days, other than through radio shows like yours. And I'm not being solicitous. You notice there's very few people that watch the nightly news. Very few people. They get their information from all different sources. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is getting focused, number one. Number two, I hear talk about, I'm honored to be able to speak to the future leaders of America this weekend in Morehouse and celebrate the accomplishments of the graduates. But I've been very clear. Every American has a right to peacefully protest. Once that protest crosses the line into hate speech or violence, that's unacceptable. Mm. And so, your vote is your voice. Lots of close elections the last couple, and every vote counts. I ran in 2020 because democracy was at stake, and I think it still is, because folks like you turned out to vote in 2020. We have made remarkable progress. Trump decides he's going to take it all down from him. For example, one of the things I did in the legislation relating to infrastructure, replacing every lead pipe in Georgia, every single one, so that now the kids, you're not going to worry about your kid in school or at home drinking water that has lead in it that causes brain damage. Mm. We're making sure that everybody has access to affordable internet, affordable and available. And that's costing billions of dollars. We're paying for it to get it done. So everybody has access. Trump's presidency could mean a return to chaos, division, and violence, not extremism. And with regard to protest again, I have, as everybody is beginning to realize now, I've done more to convince the Israelis, the Egyptians, and others to open up access to get aid into Gaza. Mm-hmm. The idea that the ugly, ugly trauma that Hamas call by victimizing those 1,200 kids and tying a mother and her baby together, pouring kerosene on them, lighting them until they burn to death, all those terrible, terrible things. Mm-hmm. And so I've made it clear that I don't think that they should go into Rafah or other places where there's intense and concentrated populations of hundreds of thousands of people and take actions that are going after someone but are indiscriminately killing a lot of people that are innocent in the process. And I've been pushing that for a long time. I think there should be a ceasefire to get the prisoners out, right, and a discussion for a long-term ceasefire. But I understand that there are people who are really upset and they think that somehow I could stop it. The truth of the matter is I'm doing all I can to make sure aid gets in, significant amounts of aid. I've been meeting with the king of Jordan, and I put together a coalition that was, anyway, the bottom line is I think that there's a lot of legitimate concern. I think people have a right to protest, to do it peacefully, and I respect.
To that end, with his appearance at Morehouse coming up, Ernie Suggs at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting yesterday that Morehouse College President David Thomas said that he is prepared to shut down Sunday's commencement exercises rather than have it disrupted before a national audience and with President Joe Biden on the stage. In an interview with NPR's Aisha Roscoe, I like Aisha, by the way, Thomas was asked if the school was, quote, open to scenarios where you would have student protesters arrested.
We've run exercises to look at all of the scenarios. And the last thing that we want to do is create a moment where someone is taken out of commencement by law enforcement because they are being disruptive. Faced with the choice of having police take people out of the Morehouse commencement in zip ties, we would essentially cancel or discontinue the commencement services on the spot.
That's it for the day. Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m. on America One Radio. Show notes at ranchoatl.com.